I'm curious your thoughts on, the Lando Max of it all of this year. That, Lando had a shot. Seemed like there were times where he fumbled the ball. Seems like there were a few times where McLaren's strategy kind of fumbled it. In terms of his mentality going into next year with the battle with Piastri, I guess I'm a Lando guy.
Can Lando truly challenge Max next season? Find out why this year wasn't his moment. Check this video out.
I kind of picked Lando coming in as being an F1 fan, and I'm like, does he have what it takes to win the championship? Is 2020 was this the year, or can it happen next year? Like, I'm curious as a a racing driver, what your thoughts are on that whole situation.
Yeah, look, it was never this year. It was never, ever, ever this year. We bigged it up because it was a cool story. And, Max won with like 7 races to go last year. So we were trying to make it a thing. It was never a thing. And that's not on Lando. It's not all on Lando. Lando wasn't ready, but also like Lando won 4 races. Max won 9. Like there's in no world should Max have lost the championship to Lando, right? So I think that's what people kind of forget is like the start of the season is so far away by the time you get to the last quarter. You forget that like Max won 5 of the first 6 races, like walking away. And everybody then got better. So when Lando started being good, so did Charles, so did Carlos, so did George, so did Lil. Like everybody was trading when Max just got to dominate early on, right? I think Lando learned a lot of good lessons. And I think he is now ready to genuinely fight for it next year. I think the team is ready, and I think Lando's ready.
What do you think they learned? Because Lando's like, I know what it takes now. Like, what do you like? It's not like there's anything. Is there something concrete that you can learn?
It's honestly, it's self-belief, and if you look at how Lando would talk about Lando in the first half of the year versus how Lando would talk about Lando in the back half of the year, there's a very noticeable difference. Every athlete's very hard on themselves. Lando was publicly like so hard on himself. And in the second half of the year, you didn't hear that. Even when it wasn't a great day, he wasn't just like shitting on himself anymore. And, when Oscar gets taken out in turn 1 and Leclerc goes from 19th to 8th in the first lap, and all of a sudden the constructors battle it's the race is on. Lando cannot make a single mistake. If he loses 1 place to Carlos, they lose the championship.
Yeah, it's a fine line though. It's such a tricky thing between self-belief and like self-delusion or like arrogance. Like, Checo has all these quotes where it's like, well, maybe I take some responsibility, but it's a big team. It's not only me. It's like,
yeah.
There's also like, well, if you're not hard enough on yourself, then what the fuck do you like? Then you don't learn anything. So there's also that.
It is absolutely a fine line, and I've got to say that I guess it's probably because I've been through every situation in the book in 11 years of driving IndyCar, but like I can tell when a driver's quotes are what the driver actually believes when he goes to bed at night, and when it's just the shit he has to say in the media.
Right.
And some of like the Checo stuff was more the latter, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the Lando stuff, I think it's pretty genuine. I think he has that confidence now. Like he's won races. He's not the amount of people that were asking him about losing the lead when he was starting from pole. Like, oh my God, that stuff is so annoying when you're a driver. Like it's so frustrating. And of course he knew. Like you don't have to bring it up again. Of course he knows. Oh, have you done anything to work on that since the last? Oh no, I just laid him back. I was like, nah, I'm fine. I'll just figure. I'll let them not get as good a start. We're like, whatever. I don't need to try any harder. Like,
do you think
what stands out about Lando's progression is his shift from being overly hard on himself to trusting his abilities and learning from mistakes? It shows maturity, and with McLaren showing strong progress, he could be in the mix for the championship soon. But then there's Max Verstappen, who has not only the car, but also an extraordinary mental game. His consistency in delivering wins, especially early in the season, means he doesn't allow anyone to get close without putting up a fight. For Lando, it's about keeping that self-belief while also keeping pace with the relentless pace Max sets. It's going to be a fascinating battle next year.
Do you think there is something wrong with that car and with the clutch or something? Or do you think that's like a driver skill?
I think it's both. I mean, the car plays a big part in it, but I think the car's as even as the rest. I don't know look, Max isn't exceptionally good at starts. I don't know if that's Max or the Red Bull. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
It's probably a combination of both. but Lando has now led several times out of turn 1 from pole. So, like, he's fine.
Right.
Max wasn't in
yeah.
P2 though.
That's touche.
Yeah.
Touche.
Max was in P4, and then all of a sudden,
and
then Oscar Piastri found
Okay,
out,
but
is
is that anti Lando, or is that pro? Like, if someone else
yeah.
was first, but Max was second, and Max passed him, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But
Right.
Lando was the only guy that could beat him on Saturday, so it was always Lando, right?
Right.
it's the narrative, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Lando's great at starts. Maybe Lando's the second best driver at starts,
Right.
and
Like,
Max is just
actually,
the best.
yeah.
No, but Oscar has gotten him a couple of times. But maybe he didn't
But
expect
Oscar
that
passed
because-
him. He didn't like just get him off the line. Like, Oscar's first lap move in Monza was unbelievable.
Oh my God, yeah.
Thing was
Right.
dirty.
Yeah.
There was such great racing this year. Is there one kind of race that sticks out to you in terms of, I mean, it's so rare in the F1 world that you get so many dynamic races. What was your favorite race to watch, commentate on this year?
My favorite one that I watched was still it's maybe a bit of a tie because the one ended poorly, but like Austria before they hit was awesome.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
just classic motor racing. That was so much fun to watch. I wish so badly that they hadn't hit and they could have just dueled it out. I don't care who won. It was
Right.
just such a good battle. And then Silverstone, the way the ebb and flow, like the Red Bull was quick, and the McLaren was quick, and the Mercedes was quick,
Yeah,
and then
the
everybody kind of the changing conditions, just they favored somebody at a different time, and so that was awesome to watch.
And
Yeah.
where was there a race where you commentated where you're like, "Wow, I'm earning my money today. This race,
Dude,
it sucks."
Yeah,
Like-
that happens. It happens a lot. I mean, I don't remember Mexico being super exciting. Like once, like Max got him off the line. Hey, Max got Carlos off the line.
Yeah.
Then Carlos just passed him back 5 laps later, whatever it was, and then
Right.
that was kind of it. Like nothing really changed.
Lando has definitely improved his starts, but Max's ability to recover from further down the grid is what makes him a true champion. Even when he isn't the first out of the blocks, his pace and strategy bring him to the front. While Lando shines from pole, Max's racecraft ensures he's the one to watch as the race progresses.
And are you getting nervous or like, what are we gonna talk about, guys? Like,
Dude, this is the biggest difference between like commentating on F1 TV versus on network TV for IndyCar. Commercial breaks.
Right.
When you have a dog shit race happening,
Yeah.
and those 2.5 minutes where you can just go like, guys, we need to come up with a plan here. What are we going to do? Let's go through the stat pack. Who went on vacation Let's get some pictures of that from Instagram. All right, and we're back. Okay, and back to those breaks are so helpful in that scenario because you can strategize what we're going to do next.
yeah,
Right. Yeah, no, it's true. Even with like the pre-show stuff and even in quali, because we watch it on the F1. What is this thing called? The
F1 TV app.
F1
multi-viewer
for F1.
Multi-viewer, yeah.
I can toggle back and forth between the international feed and the F1 TV feed, and in the international feed there'll just be like times where it's commercial break in between sessions, and then there'll be video but no one's commentating, and so if I'm watching the international feed I'll pop over, because the F1 TV feed just never stops.
Yeah, you guys got to
never
be
stops.
talking over like a close-up of Leclerc watching
Correct.
the TV.
Which is also why you should just be on the F1 TV feed the whole time. But
Let's
that's
go,
let's neither here nor there.
Well, I gotta give you props because I'd been only watching it really on like ESPN, and I had been watching only like the main broadcast, and I was hesitant to give you guys my time and energy, and then after a while I was like, I think I'm gonna go over to F1 TV. I think I like what's happening over here. You guys have done such a great
tremendous
job, and I feel like especially this year for you specific, I think the whole team, but then also I feel like for you specifically, there's been a big groundswell of people loving what you've had to offer the broadcast.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
It's funny to think about the difference between commentating on F1 TV versus network TV. When you're stuck with a boring race, what do you do in those commercial breaks? You've got to think fast and keep the audience engaged. Can you imagine the challenge of filling those dead moments when the action is quiet? At least on F1 TV, you've got the freedom to keep the conversation going without needing a break.
No, it's a great group.
I also live for Brundle, and I think they made a
Yeah,
big
dude,
mistake. they made a big mistake letting him take races off, because then I was like, he's not there. What do they got going on? Oh, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
They made a big mistake letting him take races off.
And we have little Brundle.
You have Alex
that's
Brundle,
right.
We've got his
literally
son.
sounds just
Dude,
like him.
If you close your eyes, you cannot tell that. It's insane.
Yeah.
And he's so good. The analysis that he gives is so spot on, and he delivers it so smooth, and he's got all the big words. Like he's he's so good at it. So we've got your Brundle, man, which is just a different one. It's a different brand.
You got your Brundle.
They got everything covered. Also, you got to lock down Nico Rosberg permanently, because whenever he shows up, he's an agent of chaos.
He does love stirring the old pot.
It's so fun. He doesn't care. He gives that little wow factor that I really appreciate a lot.
He did say recently on a pod, he was talking about how he was like, if I'm Lando Norris right now, I'm watching every battle that Max Verstappen has had over the last 3+ years.
I want to get into rules of engagement. Like, what do you think of the rules of engagement currently, as someone who raced in IndyCar? Because I'll watch an IndyCar race. I remember there was one IndyCar race where Pato O'Ward mugged 3 people. He took.
Oh yeah, when we were there.
Yeah.
Wasn't it at Long Beach?
It was Long Beach. Yeah, it was Long Beach. He took out Dixon.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was you guys. It was you guys. Lee Diffie was no, okay. It was a slightly aggressive move by Pato. Whereas if that was done in F1, Pato would be in The Hague, locked up forever. And it was just a casual move. Is it because the cars are more durable and nobody what do you think F1 could learn in terms of rules of engagement? Kind of interesting that, IndyCar has, they govern it themselves. There's no FIA.
Yeah.
What do you think there is to learn in terms of rules of engagement?
Well, I mean, I think the fact that the drivers have asked for a change tells you that there's something inherently wrong. But it's like anything, man. The current rules were written with a lot of input from the drivers. And then as in any competitive situation, drivers one by one slowly learn how to push the boundary of the rules, exploit the loopholes, and then you expose new problems that need to be fixed. So, credit Max for pushing them beyond the boundaries of reasonable and exposing some of the flaws in how they're written. And I think next year we're going to see a different set of guidelines. IndyCar, we've spent a lot of time, again, with the drivers trying to design a set of rules that are fair, but also as black and white as possible. And that's one of the things that came up a lot in the last just few weeks with the FIA. Some of the penalties they were dishing out. Look, if you could try to justify why that penalty was maybe necessary or fair, but there was no precedent for it. And it was inconsistent on how the same offense had been treated recently. So that's a big thing that people care about. It's just consistency.
Max Verstappen has certainly pushed the boundaries of F1's rules, exposing weaknesses and forcing changes. But how do we strike that balance between giving drivers the freedom to race hard and making sure the rules are consistently enforced? If IndyCar can make aggressive moves more acceptable without over-regulating, shouldn't F1 look at this as an example to create more clear and consistent rules?
Right. If you establish a strike zone, that's the strike zone. That's
100%.
That seems to be what's really missing from the current situation that's happening over there. Yeah. I want to get into a little bit 2025. This next year coming up. There's some interesting teammate battles. I think it's a little bit. I'm curious if you have an opinion on which car you think might have the advantage. Whether you think that they'll be kind of swapping like they did a little bit for the last half of this year, but also the Lewis Charles situation with what you think's maybe going to happen also with the Lando Piastri situation. And maybe some of these rookies coming in. What are your kind of hopes and or predictions?
Yeah,
for
what's getting you excited?
Well, I think what's getting me excited is that I think we're going to see a year similar to the back half of this year, which is incredible. Because you mentioned it earlier, you don't get that a lot in F1.
Yeah,
right. And in 2026, it's all going out the window, and it's going to be a terrible season.
Yeah.
So it's going to objectively just be awful. And so let's enjoy 2025 as best we can. I think it's going to be very similar to this year in that a team will come out strong. I don't think as strong as Red Bull came out, and I don't think it'll last as long. And I think we'll very quickly go back to, all right, if it's a lot of straightaways and cool conditions, Mercedes is going to be quick. And if it's a lot of slow speed corners and and low downforce, then Ferrari is going to be quick. And if it's just straight high down, I think every car is going to have its characteristics that track characteristics that suit the car. And I think it's going to be a volley back and forth between at least those 4 teams.
And since they all have like strong team combos, do you think that's going to favor Max because he's kind of like a one-man team?
It favors him from a driver's standpoint, but obviously it handcuffs them from constructors for sure.
Right.
But it seems like they don't really care about that.
Well, look, I mean, you look back to 07, right? And you had Fernando and Hamilton at McLaren just hammering each other, and then Kimi just sneaks in and wins it by a point. You go back to the Schumacher era. It was only ever one driver.
Yeah.
Even like I think Mark Webber got the short end of the stick a couple times at Red Bull, but like Seb was their guy and Seb won everything, right? Like it was when you have, that's the problem with having 2 good teams. Think back to 2 good drivers in a team, Senna and Prost. Right. It was terrible when they were teammates, right? Team won everything, but they luckily no car was even close. So they still wrapped up everything. But if you're just taking points off each other, it's really, really tough.
The upcoming season feels like it's going to be a lot like the second half of 2024, with more evenly matched teams. But will we see another situation where the drivers' rivalry within teams like Mercedes and Ferrari costs them precious points? If Max remains the sole star at Red Bull, could that give him an even bigger advantage as the competition splits itself between teammates?
So, what do you think's this Ferrari situation going on? I mean, I'm curious your thoughts on Lewis's struggles with qualifying this year. George having the edge on him. Seems to me he's going to a different, another team with a great another Mr. Saturday, in Charles. I guess as Lewis, my impression as the fan is like maybe the first thing to go with age is that the Saturday. Because Sunday, he doesn't seem to have a problem. He can start out of position and make his way back up to a podium like we saw in Abu Dhabi, where, he didn't make the podium, but, get the sense of it. It's that Saturday speed, is he always going to be starting on the back? Like, if Ferrari really does have a chance to win the Drivers' Championship or the Constructors, like, is Lewis always going to be starting on the back foot because Charles has the youth and the Saturday speed?
That's a very good question, and I think you've done a pretty good analysis of it because I agree. I think the first thing to go is going to be the Saturday speed. I'm not sure if that's what we saw this year, as much as he knew he was leaving from before we got to the first race, and I know that he consciously showed up to the track every weekend and tried to do his best, but subconsciously, that's coming to an end,
right?
Because last year, 2023, he buried George, right? Like he was significant. He had him covered.
Yeah.
So I don't think he forgot how to drive in the course of a year. There's a lot that was going on in the background this year. And to say that has no effect on a driver's performance, I think is probably a little bit short-sighted. So I think he's going to be invigorated with this new opportunity. But Charles is known as being a Saturday guy as long as the car's good. Because even Carlos would have qualified him regularly if the balance was just a bit off. So Charles needs the car in a very specific window, and then he can do things that no one can do with it.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see where the setup lands when you've got the incumbent who is the Ferrari boy, and then you've got the new guy coming in that's the 7-time world champion, that's Fred's boy. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic.
When you talk about team preference, is it impossible to give each driver equal treatment? Because you have Leclerc, who you say is Mr. Ferrari, golden boy, speaks Italian, cries when they don't win the constructors. But then you got Lewis Hamilton, who they're giving $700 million to. Is it possible for them to be treated equally?
The dynamic between Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc at Ferrari will be a delicate balancing act. While Hamilton has shown incredible resilience on Sundays, his struggles with qualifying this year make it a challenge, especially when paired with Leclerc's ability to extract the best from the car on Saturdays. Ferrari's commitment to Charles will likely influence their treatment of Lewis, but with their massive investment in Hamilton, they may face a tough decision in how to manage their 2 top drivers.
No, not. I mean,
Yeah.
not to 100%. I
Okay.
believe that they will try their absolute hardest to do that. But again, that's not the best way to win a driver's championship.
Right.
We just talked about that.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be a guy that gets to leave pit lane first or second, depending on where you want to be in qualifying. There's always going to be the guy that has to pit first. Like, you can never make it 100% exactly the same. Are they going to go as far as not bringing an upgrade to the track if they can only produce one in time? No, of course not. If there's a piece that will make a car faster, it will be at the racetrack. Who gets it?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The cars won't be even that weekend.
Who gets it?
I don't know.
God damn it.
And then I guess there's it's interesting because they might start out, I guess, like in your mind, like, yeah, it's all going to be equal. It's all going to be equal. And then but then this is kind of a little bit what happened with the McLaren thing this year. Was it like Lando was ahead, but like Oscar was still technically in it? So there was just like, when is the time when you really put all of your eggs in the one basket? And then will Lewis's contract, Charles's contract even allow them to do that? Do they have their own Mark Webber standing there with, full kangaroo ready to fight, be like, no, my boy is number one driver, and will it be too little too late? If you had to put money right now on who is winning the drivers' championship next year, who are you betting on?
I don't know how.
Ferrari's dynamic with Lewis and Charles will be interesting. They'll try to keep things equal, but when push comes to shove, will they pick a clear number one? Like McLaren this year, a decision will be made on who to back. Who's your pick for next year's Drivers' Championship?
You bet against Max.
That's right.
He still just operates at a level that's so much higher than everybody else. Even with Lando, I think, is ready as long as the car is competitive every weekend. What's so impressive about Max is even when the car's not the best, he's pulling home a third, a fourth, when other guys are seventh, eighth.
Right.
And talk about self-belief. I mean, Brazil, that was like, we talked about this on our pod, like that was like Michael Jordan, I Believe I Can Fly, Space Jam, from
the most clutch performance. I mean, you're probably going to see in our lifetime. Like, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's going to go down with Senna at Donington, and it's going to go down with Hamilton at Silverstone, and like it's going to go down with some of the best wet weather drives that have ever happened in a Formula One car.
Yeah, it's like so hard to relate to something like that. It's like when Lewis goes, retire the car, I'm like, yeah, totally. I totally relate.
I get that. I don't want you to be out there. You don't want to be out there. Let's just call this thing. All right.
Have you ever? What was the closest you ever came to retiring? Have you ever said that?
No. It's so against, like, I've thought it in my head. I would never say it out loud.
Especially in IndyCar.
Not even just in my own helmet without the microphone keyed up. Just, I wouldn't even utter the words. But I thought, like, the ones where it sucks in IndyCar is when you've had an incident on an oval, and like, let's say you've had a bit of contact and the car's like a little bit off. When you're on an oval and the car's a little bit off, it's terrifying, man. Right. And you're just falling laps down. You're just in the way, and you're just trying to struggle bust through it. It's like, oh, only 163 more laps, huh? So like, it's like a first lap that's not hard enough, like an accident that's not hard enough to take you out, but it's enough to damage the car, is the worst thing in an Indy car.
Max's performance in Brazil was absolutely iconic, reminding me of Michael Jordan's I Believe I Can Fly moment in Space Jam. It's not just about having the best car, it's about taking something that isn't quite perfect and making it work. He demonstrated a level of skill and confidence that few others can match, consistently bringing the car home on the podium when others are struggling. Even when conditions aren't ideal, he knows how to extract every ounce of performance. It's a remarkable display of his ability to perform at the highest level, even when the odds aren't in his favor.